We are talking here about, this is the emerging markets panel. Really, what we have guests here from Jordan, Turkey and India. And we've only got 20 minutes. Now typically panels during the day are 40 minutes, we're right here with 20 minutes. So we're going to have a speed panel. Sorry, I can see that's in your eyes, so how's that? So we're going to kick off and try and get through as much as we can. But also, it's a small crowd here, so there's no need to be shy. If you have a question for our panel experts, please do put your hand up. I know that they'd love to hear from you, probably more than they want to hear from me, so do get involved. So let's start then. This is called the Emerging Markets Panel, but we've been talking about India and the Middle East and Turkey being emerging markets for as long as I've been coming to PocketGamer Connects, I think. Those markets are actually very strong and been growing for a while. So can you give me perhaps a brief overview of your market and tell me where it is and how it's evolved over the last year maybe? Simay, Turkey. Yeah.
Let's start Turkey. Sorry about my voice. So I just bring you some latest news because it just launched 2 days ago. Turkish game developers have boosted exports in the last 2 years by more than 100% and hitting 1 billion in export last year. So up from $500 million. So we have 30 million gamers in Turkey, and we have huge potential. But we can say that we have really issues about the gaming and gambling. But it's like a baby sector, but we have huge potential right now. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We're also talking about bringing a big indie pitch to Turkey at some point. Speaking of which, please, Nour, tell us about Jordan and Mina.
My worst decision is to sit next to her. I feel short. So basically, Jordan, been in the gaming for the past 15 years. Based from Jordan, Amman, we set up a gaming company. The Middle East is one of the fast-growing markets, and we see and we listen to our colleague from Tomatum about that, the potential of the Middle East, whether Saudi Arabia or other markets. The good thing about the Middle East, the behavior is as much as it looks complex from outside because of localization and Arabic, etc. We have the same behavior of gamers like developed markets. We see a big potential in mobile gaming. The penetration of handsets, smartphones is very high. Purchase power is big in countries like Saudi Arabia. Great potential is coming soon in Iraq, which is another key market. I think that the challenge in reaching to a Middle Eastern or an Arabic user is the way you present your product to them. Whether UI, as explained before in the panel before, or the way you advertise your games. And I think recently I saw an interesting approach from Supercell, basically in one of their new games, in approaching the Middle East users, totally new way, in the way that the user is expecting. And I think the numbers will show soon in the game. So yes, I believe in the Middle East market. This is why I'm here. We witnessed for the past 2 years the big indie pitch, and we saw the developers how in the region are being able to deliver games that can compete locally and internationally. So that's my.
Great, thank you. And Amit and Gaurav, you're both represent Indian companies, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about the Indian market then?
I think a cold fact, if I were to begin with facts, is that it's touted to be a $1 billion market by the end of 2020, the online gaming market in India, which isn't nearly as large as maybe the Chinese gaming market, but still it's a very impressive growth rate that we've witnessed in this part of the world. I think there are two key differences that India as an emerging market has seen in comparison to some of the other markets. One being that mobile is probably the first platform on which a lot of Indians are playing their first games on. So a lot of these people haven't had the journey of having passed through consoles other Game Boys and so on and so forth. Smartphone and the penetration of smartphone is what's led to the advent of gaming growing so rapidly. The second thing which I think is a key differentiator for a market like India is the rise of real money games. When you're talking about transactions on the platform, not necessarily in-app purchases, but more like transactions where people are putting in some money and then maybe the top 20% takes away that pool of money, right? So that kind of real money transaction, real money based gaming in India has seen a very sharp growth over the last couple of years, and that's something that our company keeps a close eye on, and that's something that I think defines the aura of the Indian market as well.
Right. Would you add to that as well?
So from a numbers point of view, I mean, India is growing one of the fastest gaming market from a downloads perspective, as well as from a smartphone perspective, smartphone penetration perspective, engagement perspective. So I mean, if you look at it, we talk about the sleeping giant or the emerging market which you mentioned. I mean, India has bypassed that model 6 months ago. So if you look at the number of smartphone penetration in India right now, we're at about 350 million devices, expected to get to about 500 million by end of next year. So that number is huge. It is the #1 fastest growing smartphone market in the world right now, and that's growing month on month, not year on year. So every month the numbers change quite dramatically. It is the fastest growing data consumption market in the world right now. It's already hit a 10 gigabit of data penetration per month, and it's all changed in the last 18 months in the market. And the third component is on the Google Store, India is the #1 most downloaded app/gaming downloads which happen there. So all the three criteria which you're looking at from a engagement and downloads perspective, India has surpassed everybody right now. As rightly said, India is a very young market right now, where the people are starting to understand, with their mobile devices, how to engage with their smartphones and play games. So it's following a typical trend of in downloads, then to engagement, and then hopefully the monetization will come. So, and if you go back and look at last few, I would say 16 to 18 months, again a similar trend is being seen, where we're seeing the downloads were more on the arcade or simpler games. They started to engage more towards the racing category, and we're also starting to see a PUBG kind of a model. PUBG is the biggest market in the world right now is India from a download and engagement point of view. They have cracked a little bit of a model of monetization through in-apps as well, but keeping aside the top few games, majority of the revenue still is happening through advertising revenue. But overall, India is going to be the biggest gaming market from not only from a download perspective, but as you rightly said, $1 billion by 2020, and that market is changing month on month.
That's fascinating. Thank you. I've heard India described as the next China, just in terms of its rise, the number of users, basically in the rise of the games industry.
Actually, if you look at it in the last 24 months, I mean, India has surpassed every metrics which China has had in last 10 years. I mean, India is leapfrogging on a monthly basis what China did on a yearly by year basis. The only thing which India is still lagging behind is the monetization aspect. And the reason being is India has, most of the players who started to play their games, they started to play the games on their smartphone devices. And the quality of devices, or the quality of the games which were there on those devices was very limited. And the engagement factor, which is coming from a regionalization or localization or local IPs, you don't need to spend money on the arcade or a simpler games right now. As they graduate towards more action games, or as they graduate towards more complex games or mid-core games and core audiences, you will start seeing spend happen. Also, one more factor, and I'll pass it on after that, is that only the India has only about 2% of connected credit cards currently in there. They just added debit cards into the Google Play and Apple Store 3 months ago, and that's made a huge impact in the revenue of apps. And that's going to make as more and more people get connected to their to the app stores with the digital wallets and their with their apps. I mean, into their apps, we'll start seeing some penetration happen.
That's fascinating, and actually I will come back to monetisation, but what I'd like to, you answered a question there that I had, which was about games that are popular, particularly in your region. I'd like to get a sense here. Simay, in Turkey, are we seeing the same trends there in games that we're seeing elsewhere, or are we seeing a battle royale, hyper-casual? What characterises the Turkish games?
It's popular, hyper-casual. It's popular, like in gamers. But also I want to give one tip for mobile game developers. They can test their hyper-casual games in Turkey because it's highly cost-effective.
Okay.
Because of the CPI's numbers, I can give some numbers about it. So hyper-casual games on iOS have an average CPI like 10 cents in Turkey, and Android have a CPI of 5 cents. So it's also Turkish gamers, like players, are preferred to watching in-game advertisements over paying money on their games. So which makes testing hyper-casual ad monetization an ideal fit place. So it's just a tip for the developers.
We could dive into any of these subjects in depth, but we're on a speed panel. Nour, what's your experience of the MENA region as well? Are the same again? What are the trends in gaming at the moment?
For me today, I see trends are similar all over in the mobile industry, on the mobile app stores. We have similar behaviors like Turkey in terms of hyper-casual and casual games. Card games are very popular in our region. Of course, big trends like PUBG or Fortnite, and this is by default.
Yeah.
That comes to every market. Again, the users. We have difficulties similar to India in terms of using credit cards and payment being dominated by operators for years in terms of mobile games. I think the potential was and still is DOBs, direct operator billing, and any game that integrates ease of payment for the user will pay for in-app purchases. But again, it's a similar behavior. I think we are living more and more in a similar gamer behavior. Then there's the few lines of localization and impact of culturalization inside games that differs from country to another.
Yes.
Player to another.
In fact, let's do that. Let's talk about some of those localization challenges then. In India, maybe what are the local challenges, the localization challenges that might face UK developers here that want to bring games to India?
Well, very strictly, localization in the Indian market is likely to be very different from localization in any of the other foreign markets. And the reason for that is India doesn't speak one language. So there are, I think, 6 or 7 languages in India which have more than 100 million native speakers.
Wow.
So if you localize only for one language, at the most you'll end up covering for one part of the country. The south of India has 4 languages which have more than 75 million speakers. So hence, localization, in my opinion, isn't the biggest challenge. Just that the design aspects of the game need to be kept in mind if you're looking to enter the Indian market. For example, it might be, in some way suicide to try and convert a game into about 8 or 10 different languages if you look to enter the Indian market. But a lot of the hyper-casual games have gotten right is that they've reduced the text component from the game significantly. Like everybody, for example, understands the play or the pause button or the sound button and so on and so forth. So those common design principles need to be kept in mind. As a whole, I would say that if you are looking to enter the Indian market and enter the Indian market with hyper-casual titles, keep text to the minimum. That's something that's going to reap you rolling dividends.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah, that's good advice. And what about the MENA region? Nour, is there any advice that you give to people about bringing English language games to localize them?
Definitely. I think language is the last thing you have to think about.
Right.
In the MENA region, yes, Arabic is important to have it in the game. English is a common spoken language, but I think the most important part is again, culturalization is the elements inside the game. And our colleague Haneen, in her last step, she said something very important, is the way you communicate. The way you communicate with the Middle Eastern user is totally different, and that's part of your game localization.
Yeah.
Is whether the support because it's part of your localization or culturalization and the way you display your ads inside the games, free-to-play game, etc. So that's, for me, is more important than set of language translated from English to Arabic or from Chinese to Arabic, whatever. And you can see by my numbers, we tested a lot of our user behaviors, and we notice even though the user device is set in Arabic, sometimes they prefer to play the game in English.
Oh,
yeah. So language, I don't think it's a big challenge for you in our region.
I just want to give an example from Turkey. You know Netmarble. Netmarble brings like joint games from Korea to West to Turkey also. And one of the games they have a case study for Turkey. One of the game they changed the characters. One man is more hairy, hairy from here, and more macho. And the woman is like a Hürrem Sultan, the Ottoman Sultan. So the gamers want that. The gamers want to see that kind of characters. So Netmarble just do this job is very good in Turkey. Yeah.
And the text, the language, the spoken language, the jokes that comes in the game, the funny part, the thing that makes me laugh as a player in the region is totally different than someone in Europe, for example. But the gameplay is the same.
Right. Yeah. Redemption mechanic is the same. Because this is a speed panel, we haven't got long, and I don't want anyone in the audience to miss out on anything. So, does anyone have a question for our panel, for our expert panel here? I can keep asking, but I don't want anyone to miss out. Please do raise a hand. Oh, we have a question here actually. Yeah, let someone else chip in. I've got more for you, don't worry. But let's.
And the answer is no.
Well, thank you for the answer. No, just following on localization. You've all talked about localization from a game perspective, but do you have any thoughts on localization from a marketing perspective and things that are unique to each of your countries in terms of how you actually acquire users?
That's I think the most important part when you do localization today. As again I said, to be successful, at least for the market I know, Middle East, is to localize the marketing approach. Behind it is again the customer relation, and that's the key to a successful game. This is why having a partner in the region is not to localize it from English to Arabic or to have a hairy character and a sultan thing, because it can be done, you can have her whatever with any designer. The key having a partner, if you are a game developer, a publishing partner in our part of the world, is the customer care, is the reach to the market, the right moment to market your game and to reach to the user. Yeah, that's.
Right, can you, Amit or Gaurav, do you want to take that from an Indian perspective?
Even from India perspective, I think its culturalization is more important than the localization aspect. I mean, the English is the common connector between that we have so many other languages, and Gaurav mentioned about these 7 or 8 languages which we need to be able to reach out to. But if you're bringing a hyper-casual game, or if you're bringing a casual game, people will engage with English as a common language. We've seen where users even have their devices in their localized language, they will play a game in English. But in India, I mean, I think the culturalization and understanding the market is more important than working with a partner there. Is going to help. You'll get a better ROI from a monetization point of view versus trying to do it all by yourself.
Fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll ask we're kind of out of time, so I'll ask my final question to everyone on the panel. Let's start Gaurav, with you at the end there. And then work our way back here. Final thoughts. What's next for your particular country in the next 12 months, and your company within the country? What's your kind of focus for 2019?
I think India is one of the markets where there's been so much talk about hyper casual, but it's seeing a hockey stick growth in a market like India, at the back of the fact that the internet penetration has improved a lot. And like I said, that these are the games that people are actually getting introduced to the gaming world as a whole, for. And I would say that that's going to be the focus area for a lot of companies in India. The other aspect that I'd like to add to it is the introduction of real money. I think you often hear that the Indian user is extremely hard to monetize, which to some extent is true. But that's like only one side of the story. The other side of the story is that the Indian user has to be monetized, right? If he has the hope of winning maybe 15 rupees after having invested 5 rupees in a game, then I think he's literally paying for his loyalty. Right? And that could be an interesting trend that we see in the next 12 to 24 months.
Great, thank you. Amit, what about yourself?
We see the market growing and gradually moving, from a very arcade to a simpler games to more complex and engaging games. I mean, one of the biggest things, if you want to be successful in India in the next 6 to 18 months, you have to start getting games which have some engagement and retention to it. I mean, monetization will follow. I mean, I think we typically try to push too much monetization too quickly in the game, or by adding way too many ads in there. But I think if you get a good game which engages the player, I mean, your session times and engagement times are off the roof in India right now compared to some of the other countries. So, so just focus on that right now, and I think you'll get the monetization fairly quickly.
Great, thank you. Cool.
Unfortunately, with the technical glitch, we missed a bit of the few seconds in the video. If you want to be successful in the Middle East, attend PG Connect, Amman. Jordan is your gateway for the Middle East users. Work with Jordanian game developers or publishers, and you will be successful in the Middle East. That's my message.
Perfect.
If you want to success in Turkey, please attend Women in Games Turkey conference. So it's in 16th of February in Istanbul. Anyway, so esports is the buzzword in Turkey right now. It's a really, it's like almost 20 years in the world, but in Turkey everybody's talking about esports right now. Riot has opened their esports arena 2 days ago. And every investors, they want to invest in esports, even they don't understand what esport is. But this is the esport is the feature in Turkey right now. It's very taking attention.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, look, I think we're out of time. As you can tell, it's the end of the day. I'd just like to echo, of course, we've announced Pocket Gamer Connect Amman in November, so do look out for that. And I'd like to thank our panel, Simay and Nour and Amit and Gaurav. Thank you very much for sitting in and sharing your expertise.